it's Michelle from Scrap Secrets and welcome to another card making video. In this video, we're going to be using the stencil set from Honeybee Stamps called Fluttering Hearts. It is a pack of 2 stencils and we're going to be using the smaller of the 2 heart ones. I'm taping the piece of kraft cardstock down to the stencil, and that is 4 by 5.5 inches. I'm taping down the stencil, which didn't really work out, taping it to my work surface. Those pieces of washi tape were old and were just ones that were kind of laying on top of my desk. Now I'm taking the makeup brush and dipping it into the Sweet Tooth Pigment Ink, and it actually went on a lot smoother than I thought it was going to. I've never used pigment ink with makeup blending brushes before, so I didn't know how it was going to turn out, but I think it turned out pretty well. I should not have done what I did at the end where I kind of, right there, where I drug the pigment ink over to make sure that everything was covered. I probably should have left it like that because I think I drug some of the ink and pushed it a little bit outside of the hearts, but you can't tell in the final product, so I'm okay with it. I'm going to take the stencil off, and then before I heat the paper, as you see me, I just turned on my heat gun to let it heat up a little bit before you take it to the paper, which is super important because it helps minimize the warping. I cleaned off my work surface, and now I'm using my heat tool. And you can see the paper is really warping here. So what you can do is turn it over and then heat it from the back, and it flattens it out a little bit. So I'm going to heat from the front and the back, and then go back to the front till all of that pigment ink is dry to the touch, because for the next step you want to make sure that all of the pigment ink is dry because it will smear if it's not. And I wanted to clean off the stencil, so I sprayed a little bit of clean water and took my Norwex cloth and brushed it off. Now these stencils are a little bit different than some of the other ones. They're a little bit rougher and they seem to catch on whatever I have, so I really have to dab instead of wiping to get the ink off. All I'm doing here is putting the stencil back over the background to line it up perfectly. And then once I figure out where the hearts are lined up perfectly, I actually shift it just a tiny bit so that I can use some Distress Oxide inks to go over different areas. I use 2 colors of ink, and the color that I'm using right now is Dusty Concord. That's the purple. And in a minute, I'm going to switch to the Distress Oxide Worn Lipstick, which is a pink, which you'll see now that's going on. And I'm sorry you can't really see the actual colors. I don't usually use this matte when I film, but the matte was giving me a hard time with the lighting, so I do apologize that you can't see this. You will be able to see the finished product, and it does look more pastel than if you were just using it on white cardstock without the pigment ink underneath of it. I think it gives a really cool texture and a really cool look to it. So we're going back over and just blending back and forth with the pink and the purple, and there you go. You can see the blends and the really pretty results that it gives you with those 2 colors of Distress Oxide with the pigment ink. Now it would look nice with just the Distress Oxide on the craft, but I think it gives it such an even better look with the pigment underneath. So now I cut down a piece of cardstock to 8.5 by 5.5 and scored it 4 1/4. And then we're going to use the sentiment from Honeybee Stamps, and that sentiment is each day brings a new reason to be grateful. It's from Grateful Each Day. And we also are using this talk bubble. I believe this is from Simon Says Stamp. This is really old and it's up on my wall. We're going to use the Misty. I'm going to put the talk bubble in, and then we're going to use the exact same colors of Distress Oxide that we used to do the background. Now, because this is on black cardstock, it is, in person you can tell that it's pink and purple, but in the pictures it was kind of showing up like white because it has that brightness to it because it's stamped on black cardstock. So it has that oxidized effect almost. So now I'm going to ink up part of the stamp purple, part of the stamp pink. You can see it in the video, but in the pictures it's hard to see. You can see the pink and the purple right there. I'm going to stamp it a couple times with the Distress inks or the Distress Oxides so that you can see the difference, and I wanted to get them to blend a little bit better. So we're going to just ink it up again and stamp it down. Oh, a third time, here we go, because where the pink and purple met, I didn't think that it blended very well. So this is great that you can go back and forth. This is one of the wonderful things about the Misty, is that you can go back and forth with your stamping and stamp it over again. Now I wanted to heat the sentiment so that when I worked on it, I didn't have to worry about smudging any of it. So heat it from the front and the back, and then the front again, just to make sure all of that ink is dry. Distress oxides are a mixture of pigment ink and dye ink, so they dry faster than pigment ink, but they still do take a couple seconds to dry. Now I'm going to put ATG on the back of my kraft cardstock piece, and then I'm going to put ATG on the back of the thought bubble and put it on the front of the card. Now it took me a little while, probably because this was upside down, and I don't know, I'm a little crazy. Actually, it wasn't upside down. I thought I did it upside down. It didn't look right. It wasn't lined up correctly. It might be that I didn't line the sentiment up perfectly, and maybe that's what it was. I don't know, but for some reason I just couldn't get it to line up correctly. Then I took my white Signo Uniball pigment pen, gel pen, and went around the edges with the dots just to give it a little bit of the white, like the pigment in the background. I thought it just finished it off nicely, and it gave a little bit of texture to the sentiment and a little bit more interest to the center part of the card. And I love the way kraft white and black look together, and I think that the pink and purple with the pigment ink behind it just really pops. I think the black gives it a little bit of a little pop to it. So that's the entire card. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have comments or questions, please leave them below, and I'll see you again real soon in another video. Bye.